We are in week 2 of our Green Flag series on improving our relationships, and today we are focusing on a vital part of any relationship, the act of listening. But first, I want to introduce you to my wonderful wife, Annie. We've been married 21 years. We have 2 incredible daughters. Annie is a licensed marriage and family therapist and owns and operates her private practice called Salt Psychotherapy in Newport Beach. And so I am super excited for you to get to hear or listen to her today.
Well, thank you so much for having me here today. I absolutely love the crossing, and I am so excited to share with you today. Listening is a topic that is near and dear to my heart because it is the main ingredient for quality relationships. Listening is an important topic for everyone, for every single type of relationship. Clark and I are going to give you some examples from our relationship when we have struggled listening to each other, and also examples when it's worked really well. But I want you to know that what we share with you today is applicable to any sort of relationship, whether that's friendships or parent-child relationships, marriages, work-related, any form of relationship, you name it, this will apply to every single one of us. We are very human. We have fumbled and struggled in our relationship countless times, and namely in this exact topic, because good listening is very hard.
Super hard. And years ago, I remember that Annie and I were out on a date, and we went to a place called California Pizza Kitchen. And for me, it had been a stressful day at work, and I was also super distracted by the loud music, the bad service, and I was trying to figure out what pizza to order out of the millions of options the menu gave me.
So I could tell that Clark wasn't in the best mood, but when he was frustrated, at that time, I would personalize it. And I didn't tell him that I was already feeling really anxious about some things that were going on in my own life. So at this point, he's frustrated and I'm anxious, but neither one of us were telling that to the other.
Yeah, so Annie started to tell me some things from her day, and I remember trying to pay attention, but all I could think about was the water that I had asked the waiter for like forever ago. Probably actually only about 2 minutes ago. But still, I remember giving Annie the cursory and the head nods, but she could tell I wasn't really listening.
Okay, you're gonna hear the snowball effect. Him not really listening and me feeling anxious. And also, when I get anxious, I get a little weird. He thought I was pulling away and not interested in being there with him. It was a total mess.
It was a mess. I wasn't listening, Annie was pulling away, total mess. And the dinner ended with a tension and a total lack of connection between us. And on a side note, weeks later, we tried to have a redemption dinner at the same California Pizza Kitchen, and guess what? The exact same thing happened again. Needless to say, we have never returned and never will.
We don't remember what we argued about, but we do remember the distance we felt from each other.
You'd think that with me being a pastor and her being a therapist, we would have this perfected, but we don't. The truth is, we just don't. Because, in fact, we were just in our therapist's office this week getting the help that we need. God knew that I needed so much help to improve as a listener that he had me marry a therapist. But the truth is, there are no perfect relationships. What makes a relationship great, whether it's marriage, dating, or a friendship, is growing in the ability to listen to each other so that we can really understand what the other is saying. Good, active listening is hard for everyone. So today, we're going to talk about God's design for listening. Annie's going to share from a therapist's perspective on listening, and we will close with some tips and listening hacks to help us all.
I'm excited to share with you a few ideas today that will hopefully make listening a little bit easier. But get ready, y'all listening? What I'm going to share is definitely therapist language, but hopefully I'll be able to break it down so that it makes sense for all of us. So bear with me, I'm about to be your therapist today, but hang on, I promise it will all make sense. Today, I want to focus on how to listen to the heart of a person. What do I mean by that? I mean that true listening goes beyond the thoughts and words that someone is saying. Listening to the heart reaches the deeper layer of emotions. Time and time again, when a client is telling me something about a conversation they had, I'll ask, wow, so tell me, what happens on the inside when you talk about that? Tell me what you're feeling. More times than not, they'll answer with a thought, not a feeling. Then I will press and point out, well, I'm hearing more thoughts here, but I'm still not hearing what you're feeling. What are you feeling when you recall that situation or that conversation? And typically, because this is so difficult, we have to dig deep. Maybe I pull out my feelings wheel, and together we find and name the feelings, the heart of the matter. And you may be wondering today, why does this matter? That is such a fair question. It matters because we are easily cut off from our heads to our hearts. If our head represents our thoughts, then our heart represents our emotions. God's plan for us is to be whole, integrated people. So learning how to listen to our own hearts and the hearts of those around us is helping us to become whole. So to help all of us understand what it means to listen to the heart of a person, I want to talk about two words. Those words are attune and attend. Attune, to become aware of and adjust to someone's needs, feelings, or moods. It's a way of being in sync with and responsive to somebody. And the word attend, that means to give focused presence and care to someone, fully engaging with them in the moment. So, my definition for listening is a relational process where the listener attunes to and attends to the speaker's thoughts and emotions. This type of listening creates a safe space that fosters connection, understanding, and validation without judgment. The main goal of listening is to seek to understand what the other is saying.
So what does the Bible say about listening? As Annie said, God's goal for us is connection. We were literally created for relationship, and He desires for us to pay close attention to each other in those relationships. James 1:19 says, everyone should be quick to listen and slow to speak. We'll talk more about that verse later.
Well, I want to take some time to talk with you about my favorite person who I think is the best listener ever, and that is Jesus. What makes Jesus a good listener? Simply put, Jesus cares. 1 Peter 5:7 says, cast all of your cares, all of your anxieties on Him, because He, Jesus, cares for you. Jesus listens with deep love and attunement. There's a story in the Bible from John 4 about a Samaritan woman. Jesus sat with this woman at a well, talking to her and listening to her. This was extraordinary in Jesus' time because Jews didn't associate with Samaritans. And to speak directly to a Samaritan woman was even more audacious. But Jesus cared for and knew this woman's heart and made a point to go out of His way to meet with her. This woman was an outcast. She had been divorced 5 times. Sounds rough, huh? But here's the thing. This was particularly painful because society at that time was male-centric, which means only men could initiate divorce. Imagine the shame and feelings of unworthiness and rejection she must have carried. It's likely she went to the well alone at that time, avoiding others to escape further humiliation. I imagine this woman felt abandoned and not wanted, but Jesus met her there and spoke to her heart. At first, this woman wrestled in conversation with Jesus. If you read the story, she was sharing with Him many of her savvy thoughts. I am pretty sure she had to put up with many men who she thought were just trying to mess with her. But as Jesus revealed Himself and continued to speak directly to her heart, He revived her, showing her that she was wanted, valued, and loved. The God of this universe was deeply attuned to her. She was changed after that encounter with Jesus because she was so radically loved and listened to.
We see in the story that Jesus listens to us. The way He does is so powerful. Jesus always listens to the heart. Jesus is in constant pursuit of the entire landscape of our hearts. It says in Psalm 34:18 in the Voice translation, when someone is hurting or brokenhearted, Jesus moves in close and revives them in their pain. That's Jesus. But for us, it isn't easy.
So, speaking of that, why is listening so hard for us? Well, there are a variety of reasons. See if you can identify with any of these. I feel overwhelmed or triggered by what the other person is saying. Or maybe you didn't grow up being listened to, so attuned listening feels weak and vulnerable.
What does it feel like to not be heard? It can have many negative and even harmful emotional effects on us. Maybe you have felt some of these. I know that I have. When I'm not feeling listened to, I feel frustrated. I can feel lonely. I can even feel isolated. And if this happens repeatedly on any given day or any given time, it may lead to emotional withdrawal or anxiety or even depression. I might even start to feel unimportant or undervalued. Not being listened to has a big effect on me and most likely you as well.
All right, well, let's talk about the benefits of what it means to be listened to. When we are listened to, see if you can relate to this. Our bodies feel calm. We feel safe. When we are listened to, we feel so secure with the other person. It soothes and comforts. And the coolest thing is, being listened to is a form of loneliness prevention.
It's so powerful, loneliness prevention. What does it feel like to be listened to? I remember kind of the first time that I really did a good job of listening to Annie. This was early on in our relationship, and we were at a Ruby's restaurant, not California Pizza Kitchen. But I actually listened and understood what she was saying. She let me know that I had said something and done something that really hurt her feelings. And I was able to just listen, not get defensive, and actually hear how I hurt her. And as I listened, and as she felt listened to, I could see that the relief that she felt, and I could tell that she felt loved in that moment.
That is so true. When I felt listened to by Clark and really understood, I felt attuned to, safe, and loved.
It reminds me of this great quote. Being heard is so close to being loved that for the average person, they're almost indistinguishable. All that to say, good listening is good loving. I want to give you a picture of the magnets that I love. I love magnets. They click together, and the reason I want to talk about this is because I want you to have this in your minds as we go into talking about the tips and hacks we have for you. But you guys know that there are forces that cause magnets to attract or connect, right? There's also forces that cause magnets to repel or distance. So I want you to think of listening as the force that attracts and connects us together. And then think of not listening well as the force that repels and creates distance. The more distance created, the less powerful the attraction becomes, and the more difficult it is to connect. God designed us for connection. So I want you again to think of listening as the force that connects us, just like the force that connects magnets. Keep this image in mind as we now jump into some tips, some listening tips and hacks that we have for you. Now remember, the main goal of listening is to connect and understand what the other is saying. So we have 3 tips to help you do this. Tip number 1, be ready. Have a be ready posture. As I read earlier in James 1:19, it says, everyone should be quick to listen and slow to speak. In the original language, be quick is actually translated as be ready. So we should have a be ready posture when we're talking with someone. How do you have a be ready posture? Well, first, you face the talker. If I'm talking to Annie and she's looking away or looking at her phone or distracted, hey, I don't feel listened to, right? Those are bad examples. But when I'm talking to her and she's looking at me with good eye contact and she's nodding and clearly listening to me, she's put distractions away, I feel listened to. We give our full attention when we're ready. And they need to feel, the person that's talking to us needs to feel that they have our full attention. And lastly, we need to stay in the moment. Don't worry about future implications or anything else. Stay in the moment. Have a be ready posture.
All right, here we have tip number 2. This tip is called tune in. Let's revisit the word attunement just for a moment. Do you remember what that word meant? How do we tune in to someone's heart, the emotional experience within and underneath the thoughts? What I want you to do is think about somebody playing a guitar and they're trying to tune it. they're trying to get the right note. So someone will play the piano, hit the key on the piano, and the guitar player strums until they are in tune with each other. In the same way, listening with the attunement is the ability to identify what a person is feeling and experiencing. Attunement can sound like clarifying questions, like, well, what I'm hearing you say is, or do I have that right? Or is there anything else you'd like to share with me? Attuned listening shows support through validation. Attuned listening watches facial expressions or body language. In a close relationship, this kind of attuned listening helps to foster a sense of safety and security. For example, I have a best friend named Jody. We have years, decades of sweet sisterhood listening to each other through so many different seasons of our lives. I know Jody will never judge me. She's going to listen to my heart, and I know I can trust her. All right, tip number 3 is pause and reflect. Sometimes when we listen to others, their feelings can trigger our own, and we may feel really overwhelmed. Healthy listening requires us to pause and reflect. It's okay to ask for a timeout. What you're saying right now is triggering me, and I think I might need a moment, maybe even a couple of days to process. Taking that time helps us to reconnect with our own hearts, allowing us to return with a calm and thoughtful response. All right, so at this point, I want to leave you with a symbol that you can hold on to that will hopefully help you remember the importance of attunement and listening to the heart of the other person. This is called flipping the lid. So what I want you to do at home today is make a fist, but put your thumb inside your fist. Feels kind of awkward, huh? This fist is a symbol of your brain. If you've ever read Dan Siegel, The Whole Brain Child, he gives this example of the brain. This fist will help you think of the brain in 3 main parts. We have the brain stem down here, the emotional or midbrain is your thumb, and the upper brain is our executive functioning, the thinking brain. The brain stem is responsible for our most primal responses, like when we have fight, flight, or freeze. The emotional brain is responsible for our feelings. This is where our limbic system is. This is where the firing of emotions takes place. This part of the brain is what I today am calling our heart. The upper brain is responsible for things like critical thinking, for judgment and reasoning. This is where we have our most executive functioning. The thing is, our brain works best when the whole thing is working together. But here's what I want you to know and what I want to share with you today. When we are emotionally overwhelmed, we have the tendency to flip our lid, meaning our thinking, our reasoning brain goes completely offline. We literally can't think straight. If we try to reason with somebody who has a flipped lid, we will get nowhere fast, and it is going to make those big messy feelings even messier. We have to listen here to the heart, to the feeling side of what a person is expressing, so that the thinking brain can slowly get back online. Listening to the heart is so soothing that if we start here with validation and empathy, we then have created space for quality connection and closeness. If we don't do this, we are literally creating a nightmare engagement.
Okay, so the tips again. Be ready, tune in, pause and reflect so that we can connect like magnets do. Use listening as the force to connect. You think about our world today. So many people are lonely and longing for connection. But we can live out God's dream for the world if we can truly listen to each other.
You may not have had good listeners in your life, and we know many of you haven't been listened to in the way that you needed. We understand the shame and unworthiness that has left you with, but we want to make sure you know that Jesus is listening and cares. He says, cast your cares on him. He will never leave you. He says that nothing can separate you from his love. Tell him what you need. Share with him your heart, and he will listen. Still worried about not being a good listener? Don't worry, because we can be one because we have the one.
Let's pray together. And God, we do come before you and thank you that you hear us and that you will always hear us. You will always listen to our hearts. God, give us the strength to be good listeners and give us the strength to receive good listening. We love you, Jesus, so much. Pray these things in your name. Amen.